Hey everybody, I'm back again. So today we're going to talk about properties of numbers. All right. So the one nice thing about this topic that I tell my kids is that there really isn't much math involved. It's really you are categorizing some of the operations that take place and why things work the way they do. Especially when you're talking about like 0 and 1 with identity properties. So some of the words just in general are hard to pronounce. So a lot of times when I have my kids identify certain operations with this, I have them just abbreviate. But at the same time, it's good for them to know because this is something that provides reasoning with why certain math problems work the way they do. Thinking of the standardized testing, a lot of times now they want you to justify answers. This goes in with science as well when we're talking about claim, evidence, reason. So this is good practice. This may be a shorter video because there's not much work involved, but it can get rather confusing. And I have a couple techniques that you can use to kind of apply to remember what words or what properties go with what. So I hope you enjoy it. Please leave any feedback, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and bell below. Thank you. Okay, what we have here are your two properties that seem to get confused with one another the most. All right, so we can see with this first one here, we have 12 times 14 equals 14 times 12. So as we know, it doesn't really matter the order when it comes to multiplication and addition. All right, we can have 2 times 1 is going to get you 2, 1 times 2 is going to get you 2, 2 plus 1 is going to get you 3, 1 plus 2 is going to get you 3. All right, so the order does not matter. All right. The order does not matter. So we have 12 times 14, 14 times 12. If the order is being switched, this is known as the commutative, hopefully I spell it correctly as well, commutative property of, and then you just got to identify the operation, which will either be addition or multiplication, and in this case it's of multiplication. Okay? I don't have my stylus today, so I'm having some issues. All right, the next one. All right, we usually have at least 3 terms. We have 17 plus 36, as we know we should add that first, plus 4, and then 17 plus, 36 plus 4, which should be added first. So with this, once again, the order doesn't really matter, but what they're doing now is changing the grouping. So think of it like this, who you associate with, right, associative, could change from, I don't know, from one year to the next in school. So here we have the beginning being grouped together and then the ending being grouped together, but we still end up with the same result. So it's the associative property of, and in this case, it's addition. Okay? Okay, what we have next is our 2 types of identity properties. All right, so here we have the identity property of multiplication. All right, and what that states is that any number times 1 is going to get you the same thing. All right, so whether it's a negative number, an irrational number, a fraction, you're still going to end up with that same number. All right, any number times 1 is going to get you the same result as you see here. Here is the identity property of addition. All right, same type of concept, except that anything added to 0 is going to get you the same result that you started out with. All right, so same thing, whether it's a negative 3, a 3, an irrational number like this, the negative square root of 4 plus 0 is going to still get you the negative square root of 4. All right, these two can get confused, but once again, look at your operations. We're not really dealing with multiplication or division or subtraction just yet. Okay, for the next 2 problems, this is where I have a little usually have some issues in class because the kids are like, I don't understand why we have to break this apart in order to solve. So what we're looking at now is using the distributive property to solve. Now the reason we're starting out with just straight whole numbers here is that eventually when we really get into the pre-algebra and algebra, these will be replaced with variables. So this is just kind of like the practice way of going about this to see if the work is done right. So what the kids are going to do is that you're going to still take this outside number of 2, and you can break these 2 apart. So we can see that the 3 is in the 10 spot, so that's 30 plus 6. All right, and then if we do distributive property, which I always think of the old video game Paperboy, you're kind of distributing the 2 to whatever's on the inside. 2 times 30 is 60, and then 2 times 6 is 12, and then add that together, and ends up being 72. So as I said, I'm sure as a parent or even as a student, that it's frustrating to say, like, well, why are you doing this? Well, this is just laying the groundwork for what we're going to see when it comes to dealing with this with variables with exponents and things like that. So for this one here, we have a 3-digit number on the inside. So we have the 1 which is in the 100 spot, the 2 which is in the 10 spot, and then the 3 which is in the 1 spot. So we have 300 plus 60 plus 9. This is after we distribute this 3 to everybody inside. Like, once again, think of it like a paper boy, like that old school 80s video game. Add it together and it's 369. All right. Okay, now that we have the properties figured out, we could come across a problem like this. All right. So what they want us to do is to complete the equation to make it true, but also state which property is being represented. All right. So for the first one, we know that anything plus 0 is going to give us the same result of what we have. So we throw a 0 in here. What property is being shown? Well, it's the identity property of addition. Okay. All right, now the next one, we have 3 terms. In the first part here on the left side of the equal sign, we can see that one of the terms is missing. All right, so if we look at the numbers here, we do some inventory, we can see that the 14 is missing. The order is not switched, but the grouping has been switched, which means this has to be the associative property, I'll abbreviate here, of, well, it's multiplication, so it's got to be associative property of multiplication. So that's the basics of your introduction to the properties of numbers. I hope those techniques work out for you when it comes to commutative property versus associative property, because I know with my experience, some of the kids get a little confused with that. Make sure when you're doing your homework or tests or quizzes and standardized tests that you are sure to identify whether you're talking about multiplication or addition. Some teachers would kind of get you for that, so you want to make sure that you include that. The distributive property, I know it seems like it's a bit of a redundant type of process right now, but you're going to see, especially in future videos, of why we do that. Okay. So I hope you like everything. If you see anything with more higher level properties and numbers, feel free to make a comment below. Also, it would help out a lot if you could subscribe and hit that notification button. All right, have a great night.